Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You have been listening to 2/7 of the band that defines itself as klezmerish music from all the old countries, the Klein Party. Specifically tonight, you've heard from Joe Casalini on bass and Mark Lutwack on accordion. Joe is a new friend of ours, but if you were at any of our shows in our first 6 seasons of True Theater, when we were doing them live in person, you saw Mark play for all of our main stage shows. We were sorry to see him move to the West Coast, but so thrilled to have him back tonight with Joe. You'll be hearing more from both of them throughout the evening and also more about the Klein Party later on. Hey, my name is David Levy, and this is True Theater. Since 2010, we have been producing quarterly shows featuring storytellers sharing true personal stories on the theme of the evening. We have traditionally done this in person, but even though we've had to roll online due to COVID, our mission continues to be what it has always been, and that is to bring you true personal stories and build community through the sharing of stories. For those of you who are with us for the very first time tonight, we know that you're in for a real treat. And for those of you returning, and I see a lot of familiar names in the attendees list here on the Zoom meeting, and I'm sure some of our friends are watching from Facebook, we're grateful to have you back. Your support is felt from show to show to show. Thank you for returning tonight. Every evening of stories, as you may already know, features a theme, and tonight the theme is birth. Given that we just had a new year turn around and talk of the baby new year, there is a vaccine on the horizon in the hope of things returning to normal. People looking forward to spring. The thought of birth is in the air, and we thought that might be a fun topic to bring you tonight. If you are joining us from within the Zoom meeting tonight, you are in for an extra treat. Not only do you get front row seats to the action, you'll be participating, if you stick around, and we hope you will, in a Q&A session with our storytellers at the end of the night. You should see a Q&A box in the bottom center, probably, of your Zoom screen, and you can enter a question in there anytime, like Abby did earlier when she asked us about the name of the band. Thank you already for exercising your right to ask questions, Abby. Also, there's going to be a couple of opportunities tonight for people in the Zoom session to win a coffee mug if they participate in our prize-winning opportunities, which I'm not going to define for you yet. Here's an example of a coffee mug. This was from True Baseball. It's got our logo on it and the poster, and yours will look more like the photo we have for trueBIRTH, the poster, which, by the way, if you saw the slide that was on the screen before the show, and you're going to be seeing slides throughout the show, the overall poster design and the logo for True Theater was designed, as it always is, by our friend Janet Zach. But the artwork used on the poster for trueBIRTH was created by a woman by the name of Katie Atkinson. And her work is on display on her website called Spirit y Sol. Spanish, the E is a Y. SpiritYSOL.com. It's got so much beautiful work there. You really should check it out. She's also on Instagram and also Facebook, and you can find her work. And I love the picture that we have. If you take a closer look, if you didn't earlier, it's so beautiful. Really grateful to Katie for letting us use that for our show. Friends, if you're watching this on Facebook and you're thinking, dang, I wish I had registered to be a part of the Zoom audience, do that next time. Please join us in here. We would love to have you. You can be part of the Q&A and for your chance to win prizes. Let's see, you can always go to our website to find out when the registration for the next show opens. Our website, of course, is truetheater.org. We spell theater the fancy way with an R-E at the end. Speaking of things that you'll see on the slides throughout the show, that's our website and the names of our storytellers and a lot of things. You're also going to see a number that you can text if you feel like making a donation to True Theater. I mean, we are thrilled to be able to give you this show for free, and our storytellers are here, and that's all we want to do is share stories with you. If you feel compelled and are in a position to do so, we will accept donations. All you have to do is text the message TRUE11, TRUE11, no spaces, capitalization doesn't matter, TRUE11 to the number 44321. Very easy number to remember. I don't know why I almost messed it up. TRUE11 to 44321. You'll have an opportunity to donate $10, 20, 100, whatever you want, even 5. I mean, no amount is too small. Seriously, every little bit helps. And we're honestly just thrilled to see 90 people attending this meeting tonight as attendees. I'm just so grateful to have you here, seriously. But if you would like to donate, that's the way to do it. True11 to 44321. Your donations, by the way, go to help keep our lights on. We've got overhead costs of our website and our Zoom account and some other things. There's expenses per each show, advertising, and then another thing that I can't remember. I don't want to keep looking at my script to tell you. And we're also hoping to put money towards another show that we're producing this year that's not part of our season, but is being produced in large part with a generous grant from the Cincinnati Arts Wave Pride Committee. It's called True Voices Behind the Rainbow Curtain. The date has yet to be determined because COVID, but we are hoping to do that in August of this year. So go to our website, get on our mailing list, and stay abreast of all the information so you are up to date when we have announcements to make. Thank you very much. And now for the reason we're all here. Ladies and gentlemen, we always say that everybody has a story. And the only difference between strangers and friends is the sharing of that story. And tonight, you're going to make 5 new friends. Our first storyteller tonight has found it a fun game in life to see how many different career titles she can hold at a given time. Prior to the 2 she is about to tell you about, she was often traveling abroad, leading global programming with high school students for an experiential educational organization. Raised in Cincinnati and now in the Bay Area, San Francisco, California, from where she is joining us tonight, please welcome Jordan Edelheit.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm going to start with a couple of definitions. One is a doula. So a doula is a non-medical professional who provides holistic support to someone throughout their pregnancy, labor, birth, and postpartum. Someone who works in hospice is providing care for someone at the end of life, and I happen to do both. And in this bizarre experience of working with birth and death, I've noticed a lot of similarities that people didn't tell me about before. The reminder that the breath is our anchor with us from the beginning until the end. The importance of a safe and loving and compassionate environment as we make these big transitions. And the thing I want to talk to you about tonight is about this idea of reframing fear. So a year ago, actually to the day, so happy birthday, Gideon. You'll hear about him in the story. I was at a birth. It was just beautiful. And I saw this idea of reframing fear happen just before my eyes. And we were at a birth center and the laboring woman was in a tub. She was doing amazing. And so instead of contraction, you might hear me say the word surge. She was just going with the surges, each wave, just unbelievable, watching her, witnessing her and her power and her strength. I was standing behind her. Her husband was to her side. We were kind of helping if she needed to be in a new position, see how things went. The midwife was in the room, the midwife being a trained medical professional, and then her best friend, her mother, and her daughter. And between all of us, it was just like a chorus of encouragement and affirmation, one after another, and everything was beautiful. And then things started to slow down. And the midwife noticed this and really poignantly took a moment to pause and asked her, "Is there anything on your mind right now?" And she stopped and she looked up and she said, "I'm scared of tearing." And this fear of tearing is we often see that in birth. It can be common, but there are things we can do to mitigate that risk. And the midwife, with such tact and such skill and compassion, looked at her and said, I know that things are going to be, not everything is in our control. However, I'm going to do the best I can to make sure that you can birth your baby with minimal or no tearing. And within that, we kind of felt this wave of relief in the room. And 5 minutes later, she gave birth to her beautiful baby boy. And this idea of what happens when we have a moment of fear, but then it's shifted to something else, brought me back to another experience with my grandfather, actually. A year or two prior, I was with him in Cincinnati towards the end of his life. And my mom and him and I took a walk to Sharon Woods, and we sat at a bench and we had a really beautiful afternoon. And this was later kind of a day that was known as one of his last good days, the last good days that he was able to go outside and go to this place that he loved so much and would go to reflect. And I had just heard this story that I want to share with you, a parable that had brought me a lot of comfort. And I decided it might be a good time to share it with him. And so this is how the story goes. It's a parable of two babies in a womb. In a mother's womb were two babies. One asked the other, "Do you believe in life after birth?" The other replied, "Why, of course, there has to be something after birth. Maybe we are here to prepare ourselves for what we will be later." "Nonsense," said the first. "There's no life after birth. What kind of life would that be?" The second insisted, "Well, I think there's something, and maybe it's different than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore." The first replied, "Nonsense. And moreover, if there is life, then why has no one ever come back from there? Birth is the end of life. And in the afterbirth, there is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere." "Well, I don't know," said the second, "but certainly we will meet Mother, and she will take care of us." The first replied, "Mother? You actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists, then where is she now?" The second said, "She's all around us. We are surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not and could not exist." My grandpa, more affectionately known as Pops, looked up at me, and with this pregnant pause, he said, "I really like that." And prior to that moment, we hadn't talked as much about life and death. But all of a sudden, I could feel a shift in him. It was sweet, it was tender. And 1 month later, when he passed, myself, my siblings, my mom, my grandma, all around his bed in his home, when he took his last breaths, we were reminded of that story. We actually read it again that night. And this time it was our fears being quieted. Just gently going into this unknown with a little more mystery of what it is in store. But this theme of reframing fear, it kept coming back. And in the months and years after that, I started volunteering with hospice. And I also started attending births as a birth doula. And it was amazing the similarities I would find. I remember this piece of advice of, whatever you do, just don't be the most anxious person in the room. And I still don't know if someone told me that at my birth doula training or my hospice training, but regardless, I use it all the time. And it's an important lesson to carry into all those spaces. So thinking about my grandpa and that client who I shared earlier, then I had this amazing moment recently with a client who she had such fear from her first birth. She talked about this first birth 5 years ago, that although it was incredible meeting her son and the amazing amount of love that she felt when she first met him, she wasn't as confident about if she'd be able to give birth again, if her body could really do it. This past experience, she had been in a hospital with a bit of a rotating cast of characters in and out and shift changes. She had an epidural and had to labor on her back in a way that she just couldn't feel her body and felt really disconnected. And she shared those fears with me. So when she got pregnant again, her and her husband decided they wanted to get a doula and they wanted to work with someone to talk through those things that had come up in this last birth. And so we did. For months, we talked about what were the fears that had presented themselves in this last experience with the birth of her son, and how could she maybe avoid some of those with her daughter on the way. And instead of having them just wait to pop up in the middle of birth, we really tried to address them in the weeks and months beforehand. And then there was a whole plot twist when COVID happened and the hospital policies changed, and I was no longer able to be going into the hospital with them as a doula. The visitor restrictions had changed, and in that moment, towards the very end of her pregnancy, she decided to actually switch to planning to have a home birth. So we called the local midwives and we worked with them to shift her care to being at home. And we did amazing things. She started working and doing a bunch of art and made a whole art gallery in her stairwell. It was so beautiful to see. And we talked about how we can use the breath and do different laboring positions to feel empowered and know that even though she would have different pain relief options in the home, that she could do it. And so fast forward, it was time for her birth. She calls me, I arrive, and I walk into this home, and she is just incredible. She's on her hands and knees, she's on her bed, and she is completely in the flow. She's just with her experience, totally with her body. It was so mesmerizing to watch. Myself, the midwife was there, her husband, we were all navigating this environment. Very quickly, things were shifting. She walked into the bathroom, and while we were in the bathroom, she took a moment to herself. And I witnessed her as she looked at herself in the mirror, her whole body staring back at herself, having this surge come over her and move through her, and she just roared. And she roared like a panther, her husband later recalled. And let me just clarify, this roar was not a roar of pain. It was a roar of power. And I looked at her, and when I looked at her, I just thought about, oh, can I do this one day? What does this mean to just witness these miraculous, everyday, normal, but not normal moments? And it was just amazing. And moments later, she gave birth to her baby, standing up, the midwife below her, catching the baby, her husband to her side. Everything was in motion. We walked to the bedroom. She lay down with her baby on her chest, and she looked up at me, and she said, that was awesome. Wow, a moment I will never forget, and a moment that's really stuck with me. Unlike the babies in the parable, I know that life can exist after birth, but I'm not as certain about what will happen when we die. And what I do know is that my time as both a birth doula and a hospice volunteer has really been powerful in seeing how invaluable it is to keep reframing fear. So all I hope for is that when it's my time, whether to give birth or at the end of this life and whatever will be, that I can carry those lessons with me, quieting my fears when possible, and instead stepping into the unknown with awe and wonder.
Go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you so much for that story, Jordan. I hope everybody noticed the picture on the slide after her story. That was Jordan and her mom and Pops. Here's a little fun fact that Jordan shared with me. She says her wonderful, strong, and resilient mom has noticed that since Jordan started attending births as a doula, the number of times Jordan randomly calls home to thank her mom for having the compassion and strength to be pregnant and give birth to her has gone up exponentially. That's very nice. I wonder how I can use that information to get my son to call me more. I'll bet my father is wondering the same about me. I see him in the audience tonight. Hey, Dad. Folks, next up, born in the very south of Spain, in a small area known as Sanlúcar, famous for its sherry wine. You might not be surprised to hear that she's a sommelier and has worked for 30 plus years in the food and wine industry. Growing up in a crowded home without a television, the sharing of stories was integral to her home life. Her parents telling stories as she grew up. But some of her favorite stories, as you're about to hear, came from 3 miles down the road. Joining us tonight from her home now in the UK, please welcome Inma Jimenez Lopez.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I was born the middle child, the third of 6 kids. And I don't particularly believe in stereotypes, but I was a typical case. I remember once when I might have been 4 or 5 years old, we were playing hide and seek in the little apartment where we lived when I was little. And I chose my mom's wardrobe to hide myself. And it was dark and peaceful, quiet, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And around 2 hours later, I came out of the wardrobe to realize that nobody was looking for me. Actually, the game was long finished. That tells you a little bit about it. It didn't bother me, really. To be in a place quiet on my own, it was a luxury in that crowded and noisy apartment. It was really something that I could look for, to be just playing solo. One of my favorite places to be quiet and peaceful was my grandma's. I used to, at the weekends, I used to wake up really early, wash my face, and even not saying goodbye, leave my house and walk 3 miles just by myself to go to my grandma's. And of course, when I got there, my grandma would call my mom and say, she's here, don't worry. Just to be there, and she lived in a massive house, and it was just amazing for me. I guess because someone was paying attention to me for a change, but mostly because I love listening to her telling stories. Like when my auntie became a nun, for example, or the first day of the Spanish Civil War, when my mom, being a kid, entered the room, the kitchen, and stumbled with a big sack of potatoes. Or when my sister got lost and spent the night in the police station eating sweeties. But my favorite one, the one I could hear 100 times and always for me was like the first one. I would ask all the details. It was the story of my birth. My grandma died in 2000. She was 99 years old. I was in Buenos Aires at that time, and it took me 3 days to come back home. But she waited for me. She waited for me. And when I got there, it was her last moment. And at that time, it was her it was she who asked me, Marima, do you remember the story of your birth? Mostly because the story of my birth is quite unique. I arrived to this world with a membrane around me before my mother's water was broke. So I decided a few months ago to write this story, mostly to not forget that part of my story. And I would like to share it with you, if that's okay. If I can find it. Sorry. Oh my God, just 1 second. I had it here a minute ago. Ah, sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. So the set is my grandma and my mom is there. They're there. And of course, I am there, but I am still in the belly. Okay. The baby is coming, says my mom, with a calm and confident voice, followed by a smile. After all, it's her third birth, so she knows what to do. My grandma, on the other hand, isn't that much collected. I will call the doula, she said, not letting her anxiety win. My mom gazes her belly, caressing her rounded form, and with kindness lets the words escape. Don't worry, she's petite. She will be no trouble. How do you know the baby is a girl? Because I know, answers my mom, shrugging her shoulders. I smile myself. She knows everything. I want to tell her she's right, so I make a soft move. She feels the inside cuddle and strokes her belly. She reads my message. We start preparing everything, just the three of us. Although technically speaking, I'm not there yet, I'm helping. I am preparing myself. I also know the ropes. Her moves while making the massive bed in my grandma's room are helping me to dance into position. The midwife is in her way, my grandma announces while entering the room, bringing a pile of white towels. My mom smiles and replies, the doula will make you on time. The baby's ready. I can feel the smooth pressure of her head. She was following some kind of rhythm a minute ago. Now she seems quiet and serene. Meanwhile, relating all this, she has put herself on the bed and opened her legs. Mom, I'm here. My grandma is at the other side of the room, putting some water in a small enamel sink. Praying for an easy delivery, she hears my mom calling. It is not a yell, more like a mixture of surprise and something like a question. She walks to the bed, looking at my mom's face, instinctively knowing that something is happening. She follows my mom's glance and notices something like a sack of water in front of her legs. I don't know what is happening. I can perceive some light that wasn't there before. I can hear their voices. Never have done this before, but I'm glad I got everyone's attention. I make a move. Wilhelmina, it is moving. My mom responds with a kind warning in her voice. Of course, she is moving. My grandma quickly takes a towel and grabs the sack with me inside, meanwhile my mom breaks the fine membrane. Musing, musing a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. She checks carefully my arms, hands, and fingers, my legs, feet, and toes. This type of birth in the sac is called encaul, E-N-C-A-U-L. My grandma doesn't know that. She doesn't need to. She quickly takes the corner of the towel and starts washing my face. Shivering a little with the thought of a miracle hanging somewhere inside her mind. My mom doesn't know that either. She's carefully peeling the veil of me. And don't ask me. I'm busy noticing something different on my skin. It is fresh and moves. It enters into my nose and goes through me. Look, Mom, my grandma looks tenderly at me. She's smiling. Yes, Wilhelmina, she's smiling indeed. Have you ever heard of this type of birth? Have you ever been with this type of birth? My grandma used to tell me many times that it was a sign of good luck and a blessing. I don't know about that. What I do know is that it was a blessing to have her in my life.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Thank you so much for that, Inma. I find your story so sweet. I really love that. I should add that since Inma's son David was born, great name, by the way, Inma has removed the television from her own home, and stories are once again central to family life in her household. That's so great. Thanks again, Inma. Folks, before our third storyteller, I just want to remind you that if you feel compelled and are able to donate something to True Theater for tonight's show, or just for whatever reason you want to, you can do that by texting the phrase TRUE11, TRUE11, to the number 44321. You get a link back and it takes you to a website, and from there, the world is your oyster. And I want to take a moment too to thank all the people that donated to our season 10 10 for 10 campaign. All your first names are here. We are so overwhelmed. Yet it does look like some names are there twice, but those are people with the same first name. I just thank you so much, everybody. All your full names are going to appear in our annual report, the beautiful report that was put together by our treasurer, Ford Clark, and is soon going to be available on our website, along with everything you need to know about True Theater's financial standings from last season. Thank you again, all of you, and thank you in advance to everybody that's going to donate tonight as part of our season 11 campaign. We really, really do appreciate the help. Also, so you know, after this next storyteller, we're going to take a brief 4-minute intermission, and then there'll be another 2 storytellers and a question and answer at the end of the show. First, we're going to have our 3rd storyteller, and also during the intermission, of course, you could stretch your legs, run to the bathroom, get a snack, donate to True Theater, but there's also going to be a picture on the slide that you will see, and I will explain that after our storyteller, but it'll be our first giveaway contest tonight, available only to the people in the Zoom meeting. So again, another benefit for you joining us here tonight in Zoom. But first, our next storyteller is right here in Cincinnati, where I am. The first one tonight to be telling a story from Cincinnati. She recently retired after 45 years of working and owning the family business that her dad started in 1960, selling it on to the 3rd generation. She now keeps busy hosting what she calls Grandma Camp for her 6, soon-to-be 7 grandkids. In addition to reading and gardening, she loves to attend her grandchildren's events, whether they be sports, theater, or music. Please welcome Amy Hart.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
In May of 2015, I was frantically finishing up some gardening to get to a family party when my husband came outside with a piece of mail and said, "You have to read this." Now, I knew I couldn't stop what I was doing if we were going to make it to this party on time, so I told him, just leave it and I'll read it later. But he came over to me, made me look up at him, and said, "No, Amy, you really want to read this letter. You need to read this letter." And so I read. I've been thinking about what I'd say in this letter for 35 years, and yet I'm still finding it difficult to find the right words. Simply put, I'm your birth son. Those 2 lines brought back all the shame, guilt, fear, loss, and heartbreak of being a pregnant, unwed 17-year-old in March of 1980. When I realized I was pregnant, the father of the baby did the honorable thing and asked me to marry him. But I knew the odds of a successful marriage at 17 weren't great. I still had to finish high school. I had plans to go to college. He was living at home with his parents. I was living with one of my sisters and her husband. Things just weren't falling into place for me to be able to keep this baby and raise it. Giving the baby up for adoption would be our plan. I feared that I couldn't give it everything it needed and everything it deserved. It was an uneventful pregnancy, and when the baby, a boy, was born, I told the nurses that I wanted to keep him with me as much as possible. And for 5 days, he was mine. I rocked him, sang to him, I fed him, changed him. I talked to him, I cried over him. I studied his face. I gazed into the pools of his big dark eyes. I drank in the smell of him and cuddled him close, just loving him. I knew I had to commit him to memory, a memory that had to last me a lifetime. Because even though I had given birth to him and I had named him, he would be part of another family and he would be theirs. He would never know that he was Hamilton Kenneth Hart and I would be a nameless someone he would never meet. The last time I held him, I kissed him through tears, tucked the baby photo from the hospital, the only picture I would ever have, into my pocket and sent him on with a wish. I made it a point every year to mark his birthday on the calendar, buy a cupcake, light a candle, and make that same wish. His birth father and I, we did marry 5 years later. The marriage that at 17 I didn't think would last is now 36 years strong. I had had a tough time getting through college. In fact, I'm still a few credits shy of graduating. I was restless and unsettled and always felt like something was missing. So it was no surprise to anyone when our first daughter was born 9.5 months after we were married. A second daughter 18 months after that, a third daughter 18 months after that, a son 2 years later, and finally our bonus baby 7 years later. 4 kids in 5 years and that amazing bonus baby at the end. Life was good and we were very busy, but I could never get our firstborn out of my mind. His brothers and sisters knew about him at an early age, having found that baby picture and the blue bassinet card from the hospital in a box of my high school things. And because he had never been a family secret, and families share memories and talk and tell stories, I wanted them to know this story in case their brother ever came knocking on the door or sent a letter. I wanted them to know who he was. They'd often ask us, would they ever meet their brother? Would their dad and I ever try to find him? And I had to answer honestly. Their dad and I had made a decision and we prayed that he was happy, but we wouldn't disrupt his life or that of his family. But we had left some breadcrumbs just in case he ever decided to look for us. I hadn't changed my name when we got married. We lived on the same block that I had lived on when I was in high school. He hadn't been a family secret, so if he found one relative, he'd find us all. And finally, when he was 25, I went out to an adoption reunion website, left a few notes. It didn't take long as our kids grew up to inform us that our decision was not their decision, and they were going to find their brother. Each year on his birthday, the kids continued to buy a cupcake. They'd each make their own separate wish, and we'd blow out that candle in unison. In March of 2015, the state of Ohio opened its sealed adoption records. The wish, as the kids blew out the candle on the cupcake that year, March the 4th, they were going to find their brother. As full-blood siblings, they had every right to those records, records that tied them to what they had lost. Unfortunately for them, the youngest of them was only 17, and they would have to wait 1 more year. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was that wish blowing across the universe. But at the same time, they were trying to find their brother. Their brother was finding us. He too knew that the Ohio records had opened. And as he tells it, after 2 forms of ID, a notarized form, $20, and 7 to 10 business days, he had our names. A quick internet Facebook search, aided by some breadcrumbs, brought him face to face with siblings he had only ever dreamed of having. And to find that his birth parents had married and they were full blood siblings was just icing on the cake. In this technological age, he reached out to siblings first. Did they know who he was? Would other family know who he was? Had he been the skeleton in the closet? Would we be excited that he was reaching out? And did we get the letter? The letter. Boy, did we get the letter. I took it to that family party. I shared it with everyone there. I made copies for other family members and friends. Reading that he had had a great childhood, graduated from college and grad school, had an amazing career and a job that he loved, were things I had always hoped for. And I couldn't wait to write back. A 10-page handwritten outpouring of all the things I'd wanted to tell him for 35 years. We emailed back and forth. We sent boxes filled with photos and family movies on DVD. Our first face-to-face meeting was on Skype, but I still felt like he was in the room with us. I found myself staring at that face that I had memorized all those years before and gazing into the pool of those big dark eyes one more time. And I just couldn't take my eyes off of him. We talked for 5 hours and then made plans to meet up in San Diego for what turned out to be a long weekend of sharing, acceptance, and realizing the bond between a mother and her child never goes away. Since then, we've shared birthdays, holidays, vacations, weddings, and special occasions together as a whole family. His relationship with his siblings, they didn't miss a beat. Everybody fell right into step as if he had never, ever been out of their lives. And I no longer feel like something is missing. And that wish that I made every year on his birthday, that he would grow up strong and loving, that he would listen to his heart, follow his dreams, because someday it would bring him back to us, has given birth to a lifetime of wishes coming true.
2, 3, 4.
Thank you, Amy. If you're looking at that picture on the slide after Amy's story, those were all 6 kids, the younger 5 hugging the oldest. I just love that. Boy, what a beautiful sentiment too. A little wish in your heart, she says, can bring about magical things. Thank you so much, Amy. Hey friends, we're going to take a quick 4-minute intermission here for you to stretch your legs, grab a bite, maybe text TRUE11 to 44321. And for those of you in the Zoom meeting, you're going to see a picture on the screen of 5 celebrities from their younger days, all with birthdays that you could still celebrate in the month of January. Not that that's going to be much of a clue. If you name as many celebrities as you can and drop that into the Q&A box, we'll announce later on who named the most. I don't think anybody's going to get 5. I'd be surprised if anybody got 4. So if you can name any of them, go ahead and enter. And for your chance to win a mug like this, but with that beautiful image from Katie Atkinson of Spirit He Soul on it, to our winners today. And we'll come back after intermission in 4 minutes with 2 more stories, the winners of that contest, and our Q&A. See you soon. And we're back. Thanks once again to 2/7 of the Klein Party, Mark Lutwack and Joe Castellini, for playing us through and throughout the evening. Hey folks, if you'd like to hear more of the music of the Klein Party, and I recommend you do check it out, you can go to their website at thekleinparty.com. That's Klein, K-L-E-I-N, thekleinparty.com. They also have a Facebook page under the same name. Also, I need to mention that Mark collaborates with his wife, Y. York, in a series of theater pieces, among which is a series written by his wife, Y, referred to as the Lady Who series, a series of monologues for women, performed often by Y, but also recently from many different actresses. And you could find these videos on their website at snowflakeavalanche.com. They're really great videos, the most recent of which stars Carrie Preston of True Blood and The Good Wife fame, Person of Interest, other TV shows and movies. Check out those videos at snowflakeavalanche.org. I think I said .com before, snowflakeavalanche.org. They're really great. We'll have the results of the intermission contest to identify celebrities whose birthdays you can still celebrate this month later on in the show. Meanwhile, if you're thinking, hey, Dave, you know, I am full of stories. How can I go about sharing stories at your show? And what other shows do you have coming up, in fact? Well, I tell you, we have 2 with dates scheduled for the rest of season 11 and 1 with the to be determined date. In fact, coming up next, we've got, you can see on the slide right here, True Dog. The theme is dogs, of course, on April 29th. And then we're going to have True Neighbor on July 29th. And if you think that you've got a story that fits either of those themes or you're not sure, go ahead and submit your story ideas. All you have to do is go to truetheater.org. That's our website. Find the Share Your Story page and fill in the information that you see there. It's very easy to reach us. You could also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We'll always be announcing when we are actively looking for stories and the themes we're looking for. But if you've got a story idea in mind already, go ahead and submit. I noticed too, a lot of people who registered to join us in the Zoom webinar tonight checked the boxes for some of the shows they're interested in being alerted when we're searching for stories for, and we will be reaching out to you when we begin a more active search for those stories. It's 3 months between shows, and so there's a cycle. But if you want to be proactive and reach out to us, go to our website at truetheater.org. Remember, we spell theater the fancy way, ending in re.org, and go to the Share Your Story page to share your story idea. We have that one-off show that I also mentioned, our first in our True Voices series called True Voices Behind the Rainbow Curtain, sponsored with a generous grant by ArtsWave's Pride Committee. It's an LGBTQ+ themed show, and we'll be looking for storytellers for that as well. But like I said, the date has yet to be determined. We have some things to work out about that. And now back to our show. I first met our next storyteller through the burgeoning storytelling scene that is here in Cincinnati and Dayton. It was while attending an event by Lore Storytelling up in Dayton, a group of which I am very fond. But she has since gone on to create her own show called The Lamp, which unites nurses and storytelling to strengthen the human connection so integral to nursing and healing, to raise nurses' voices collectively for positive change. In fact, the story she's about to tell you would have been totally appropriate for her own show, but we're honored that she's sharing it with us tonight. Please welcome Nicole Rotten.
I would rather, as a nurse, hold the hand of somebody while they take their last breath. Then be the nurse that brings a new baby into the world for their first. In nursing and as a nurse, we all have our role to play. However, in nursing school, it's a completely different story. You must take and pass every single nursing clinical. These are things that include ICU, med-surg, peds, psych, and OBGYN. I went back to nursing school when my daughters were 2 and 4. I wanted to be an example of feminine strength. I didn't want to just tell them to go out and follow their dreams and live their life and not be an example of that myself. So I headed back to nursing school. But going back to nursing school as an adult with children is a completely different experience than when you went the first time when you were 18 and 19. You understand the expense. Failure is not an option. And my relationship with the other students was very different. I had almost a motherly, nurturing type relationship with a lot of the younger students. So when I look back at my OBGYN clinical, I can maybe now understand why my clinical instructor chose me to be with the only 19-year-old young male nursing student, Colin. I need to explain Colin. He was very tall, at least 6 foot, lanky, blonde hair, a little pale, extremely shy to the point of bashfulness or even a little awkwardness. But he was fiercely smart and he really, really wanted to be a surgical nurse. You know, me and Colin, we really did not have that much in common. There was a 10 age difference and everything else that goes along with me being in almost 30 and him being 19. But the one thing that we did have in common was the fact that neither one of us was that excited about being in our OBGYN clinical. For myself, I had already experienced birth twice and a family member's, and Colin, being a 19-year-old young man, really was not that excited about seeing something the size of a melon come out of a stranger's vagina. I guess I need to explain clinical a little bit to you so you can understand me and Colin's plan. You see, it lasts for a full semester. You show up 1 day a week and you're only there for a few hours. So you might or might not get to see a birth during your clinical rotation. And that was the plan we had. We stay under the radar. We just might get through this. Things never go as planned. We showed up one morning and the clinical instructor gives us a patient, a mother that had just arrived in pre-labor. You know, at first me and Colin, we kind of high-fived it a little, thinking, you know, pre-labor. So by the time this clinical hour is over, there's no way she'll have this baby. We'll get just enough information to do all our clinical sheets, care plans, and our homework, turn it in, go home, call it a day, and we will be done. We go in and we meet the soon-to-be mother. And this mother-to-be has a plan herself, a very strict birth plan. And this plan does not have nursing students on it. After a little bit of talking with her, she's now kind of okay with us being there. She says we can, but she definitely gives the vibe that she's not wanting us to stick around in the room for small talk. So me and Colin head over to the break room to do all our homework. We weren't even there an hour when we were called back because this lady's birth wasn't going as she had planned. In fact, it was going a lot faster. I knocked on the door, and when we opened into the room was extremely dark and dim according to her birth plan. This is how she wanted it. But this meant there was this spotlight beaming down onto her vagina so the healthcare workers could care for her. I could feel Colin emotionally and physically just take a step back, like, no way. So I came up with a plan. I took Colin by his arm, I kept him right next to me, and I said to myself and him, we are going to stick to the head of the bed. We're going to go up there, hang out, and that's where we'll be. And when we got there, I viewed this woman, and I had a ping of empathy. I remember those feelings, those fears, that pain, and I wanted to be there for her. So I got the cool cloths and the ice chips, and I really came through on those words of encouragement. But I was not in this lady's birth plan. Through a red beet face and sweaty brow and gritted teeth, she pointed at me and Colin and she said, "Get out of my face. Isn't all the learning going on down there?" After the shock wore off and I fully accepted that she did not want us near her, I took Colin to the other end of the bed where his red face turned white, and I could feel his knees buckle just a little. And so I got him a seat. And now I was nursing Colin. It got to the point where I was like, dude, just go out and get a bit of fresh air, maybe some juice, a little food, come back. As time went on and time went on, Colin didn't come back. I was starting to think maybe Colin had a plan of his own, and that was to never come back. This happens in nursing school all the time. You meet somebody one day, they're gone the next. They see something, they go through something, and they realize this is not for them. And I thought for sure that's shining light beaming down on that vagina did it for Colin. He was like, I'm out, forget this. And right when I gave up on Colin, he knocked on the door and came in. And he really could not have came in at a more opportune time. It was at the exact point that the physician was just done examining the mother-to-be and announced that she would need a C-section. She was having, her labor was going too fast and the child was way too big, and he thought it would be best and safest to have a C-section. But that was not on this woman's birth plan. And I've never seen anybody with more persistence than this woman. She was not going to have a C-section, and everybody had better make a different plan. And so it happened. The doctors and the nurses, they started scrambling around, making a new plan, and there was new orders for an episiotomy, a surgical incision of the vagina, and for forceps. And this is about the time where I'm like really getting involved in all the drama. The husband's pacing, the woman screaming, the nurses are collecting all the new equipment that's going to be needed, and the monitor, and watching the heart rate of the child and the contractions. That I forgot to pay attention to Colin. The nurse brings over the stuff for the episiotomy and the physician performs it. And I think Colin's doing very well. I mean, he's still standing there and he's watching it. I figured, you know, he wants to be a surgical nurse. So he's probably viewing all this very objectively. But when the physician is handed the sterile bag with the forceps and he rips it open and pulls out the steel forceps, inserts it into the woman, and she lets out the most blood-curdling scream that I've ever heard to this day. That was it for Colin. Hard on the floor, passed out. So as this baby was being pulled into this world for its first breath, me, a less than 5-foot woman, was taking this very young, very tall young man by the armpits and dragging him into the corner of the room. When he finally came to say he was embarrassed is an understatement. But I had a plan. I calmed his fears. I said, look at her, Con. She's holding her baby skin to skin. She is in pure bliss, in love with this child. She doesn't give two craps about the dumb nursing student, especially the one that passed out, in the corner of the room. And this would be the most opportune time to make our escape. And he looked at me so thankful. And I said, I will never tell anyone about this. Until now.
1, 2, 3.
Colin, if you're out there watching, thank you for your role in Nicole's story. And Nicole, thank you for sharing it. No longer a student, Nicole now leads a busy medical surgical unit where you can imagine stories abound. But that is not the only source of the stories you will hear if you check out her storytelling show, The Lamp, which you can do by going to Facebook or Instagram and looking for The Lamp Storytelling, at The Lamp Storytelling. You'll be able to see videos from some past performances and find out what has been planned for the rest of 2021. Please check out The Lamp Storytelling, and thanks again, Nicole. All right, real quick now before our final storyteller of the evening, the answers to the intermission contest. The celebrities that you saw on the screen and are seeing now, from left to right and top to bottom: Oprah Winfrey, whose birthday is tomorrow, January 29th. Sarah Gilbert, also tomorrow, January 29th. Justin Timberlake turns the big 4-0 this coming Sunday. Celebrating a birthday today, also turning the big 4-0, Elijah Wood. Happy birthday, Elijah. And finally, and this is a bit of a trick question because I said that these were pictures of their younger selves, but this one is not that much younger than pictured here. Rapper and social media phenom called That Girl Lele. She turns 14 today. Happy birthday, That Girl Lele. And I had predicted nobody would get 4, but as it turns out, 2 people got 4. Amy Dalton and Sharon, no last name. Amy and Sharon will be in touch with you after the show about how to get you your mugs. And congratulations on getting 4 out of 5 of the celebrities correct. Now, our final storyteller tonight has been a professional actor, director, and writer for almost 3 decades. After spending time in Chicago, New York, and many other markets, she picked Cincinnati, yay, to grow her career and create a wonderful home for her family. Cincinnati audiences may know her will know her from many, many things, but most recently, her one-woman show produced as part of the last in-person Cincinnati Fringe Festival we had before COVID, called The MILF Also Rises, which I saw and I love. It's so good. She's very happy to be here tonight, but she misses seeing people's faces and she's looking forward to COVID being over. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jennifer Joplin.
It's New York City, early summer of my 34th year, and my OBGYN says, "So you're not planning on having children?" It was a statement, not a question. "No, yes, we are." "You're almost 35. What exactly are you waiting for?" "Okay." "Life partner, check. Good job, check. Thriving theatrical career, financial security." I guess I would just have to trust that these things would catch up with me. The time was now, apparently, if ever, according to my doctor and my biological clock. And so my now husband, then longtime boyfriend, and I decided to start trying to not get pregnant. And boom, just like that, we did. Fast forward 9 months, February 2008, we are now husband and wife. And Barack and Hillary are neck and neck for the Democratic presidential nominee. I have just finished portraying a very pregnant lesbian poetess, Adrienne Rich, in the play She Like Girls. And we know that our baby boy to be's name will be Max. Elaborate birth plans, a natural birth at St. Luke's Roosevelt, are in place with a 3-page birth plan that is all typed up and ready to go. But I am gaining too much weight. And if I don't get that in check, I could be disqualified from the Natural Birthing Center. Geez, rude. But carbs and sugars being banned from my diet doesn't stop me from sneaking into the bodega and buying a big ass Rice Krispie treat after every rehearsal. I would devour it hidden in my oversized Snow White full-length coat, making me look like a ridiculous igloo that could barely make it through the subway turnstiles. It was a 2-block walk straight uphill from the subway station to our 2-bedroom apartment right across the street from the Hamilton Grange in Harlem. I would walk off those Rice Krispie treats. On the evening of February 19th, my little brother's 30th birthday, I weighed in just under the legal limit, and so I requested Rocky Road ice cream as I bounced on my labor ball and watched The Simpsons and timed my contractions. This was happening. A couple of months before that, we had been seeing this unintentionally hilarious commercial for an Animal Planet show where this guy was dressed up in a bad Halloween costume hippo getup and was trying to casually blend in with this herd of hippos, and the hippos were not having it. And so our epidural code word, the word that meant, no, seriously, give me the fucking epidural, was undercover hippo. Oh, but we wouldn't need it. We had gone through Lamaze. We had followed most of the AMA, the advanced maternal age precautions, and I was signed up for my private birthing room at St. Luke's with an oversized tub for warm therapeutic soaking, and the lights dimmed, and candles, and calming music, and my husband, a professional photographer, there to document this miracle, the beautiful process of birth. Our plan was to stay at home until I could answer the TACO questions. This is a Lamaze acronym for when your water breaks. Time, amount, color, and odor, the beautiful process of birth. But the pain started moving faster than our plans. And by the time we were in our Jetta headed towards the hospital, every pothole on Columbus Avenue, and there are a lot of potholes on Columbus Avenue, Felt like I was hitting my tailbone hard on the pavement. By the time we checked in, all I knew was pain. Finally, curtains drawn, feet up, dilation check, and I'm sorry, Mrs. Joplin, but you're just not far enough along to be admitted. It was the middle of the night in February, and yet it was suggested that we just head on over to Central Park, walk it off, come back a couple hours later. Well, this sounded absurd on every level, and my soon-to-be son, Max, must have agreed because he suddenly twisted and turned and found himself in a new position with his hard skull at the base of my spine. And this is what is called lower back labor, and it was not in my plans. And before I knew what was happening, the pain was so intense, I threw up my rocky road. I was on the floor on all fours with my cheek on a chair that was supporting my head in between contractions. There was nothing beautiful about this. And half of Midtown Manhattan vowed that night never to have children based on the screams of anguish coming from St. Luke's. I surrendered, and I surrendered quickly. There was no breathing through this. I couldn't think. I could barely see straight. I was in so much pain. Screw the birth plan. I grabbed my husband's hand and I declared, undercover hippo, undercover hippo. And ultimately, I was very glad that we went the epidural route because it took seemingly forever for me to dilate to the point where I was allowed to push, and push I did. And I did. And I did. But by the look on the disappointed doctor's face, it wasn't enough. Max was sunny side up, trying to make his entrance shoulders first. And, well, it just wasn't working. Oh, the only thing that popped out after hours of pushing was a nugget or two of poop. This is actually a very common part of the beautiful process of birth, but nobody tells you that. And nobody noticed. So I actually had to ask my husband to please ask a nurse to please do something about the poop that was lying there right in front of my open air vagina. I was told that I could keep pushing for a little while longer if I wanted to, but a C-section was officially recommended. I didn't want this. I wanted so badly to be proud of this moment. I was a strong woman, brave, sturdy. Why couldn't I handle this? But there are certain things that are out of our control. And so when I reluctantly agreed, I was whisked off to an operating room that had already been set up for me. Oh my God, it was so cold. And a blue tarp was set up from the waist down. You do not want to see this. And I was staring straight up at a sterile ceiling, feeling no pain. But I did feel a pull, a tug, an unseen removal of something from me. I had no visual for the moment that Max came into this world. But my husband was there, camera at the ready, and so I have secondhand proof that it did happen. But I would not lay eyes on Max for another hour or so because I still had to be stitched up. But in those first few seconds of his official life on this earth, from across the operating room, I heard him. It's hard to fully describe that sound. A little lower than I expected. Croaky, funny, sweet, and a pitch that surged through my soul. And I knew that was my son more than I have ever known anything in my life. And if I had one moment to relive in this world, I would pick that moment when I first heard him. Not one thing on my 3-page birth plan came to pass. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. It's lovely to see those pictures of you and Max as well. Friends, if you are in or around Cincinnati, please keep your ears open for when the Playhouse in the Park announces the resumption and the planning of the delayed opening night of Murder on the Orient Express, in which Jennifer will be playing Mrs. Hubbard. I will be among those people getting tickets right away. And I'm sure it's going to be great. Thank you so much for that story, Jennifer. Hey, folks, that's our show. We do have the Q&A section coming right up. We hope you'll stick around for it with questions that we have gotten from our audience members, and we're ready to go with those. I will explain our last prize giveaway in just a moment too. But first, I want to thank everybody associated with the show. First, our storytellers, Jordan and Inma and Amy and Nicole and Jennifer, Mark and Joe, our musicians for tonight, our magicians behind the screen, our technical director, Jackson Short, and our production manager, Annette Ucci. And of course, it takes a lot more people than just the ones you saw here tonight to make this show happen. Everybody that you see on the screen right now has something to do with making this show come to you tonight. It sincerely takes a village, and we're so grateful to everybody who had a hand in it, and also everybody whose name we may have embarrassingly forgot. Notice at the end, if you're watching, you are on the list too. We always say it takes 2 people to tell a story, 1 to tell it and 1 to listen. And by joining us tonight with your ears and your hearts, you have honored our storytellers with the gift of being open to receiving their stories. Thank you. We're going to take just 2 minutes for those of you who need to go. But if you can stick around for our Q&A. For our last contest, here's what we want you to do. Enter your birthday, that's just the month and day, we don't need the year, into the Q&A box. Well, and if you're a little shy about that, and I understand some people, privacy and all of that, pick a day of the year. Just pick any month and day of the year. Enter that into the Q&A box, and we'll explain why when we come back. And for our friends on Facebook who are watching, thank you for sticking around. I'll tell you what, we're going to have one for you too when we come back from the intermission. So remember, everybody, you can still donate to True Theater's Season 11 campaign by texting TRUE11, TRUE11 to 44321, and you follow the prompts from there. Don't forget that our next show is True Dog on April 29th, and we're way open to receive your story submissions, your ideas for that. And whether we see you at True Dog or in just a couple of minutes after this 2-minute break, until the next time we see you, please stay safe, stay healthy, and stay true. thank you once again, Mark and Joe of the Klein Party. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking around for our question and answer session. Our storytellers are coming up on the screen. But first, the reason why we asked you to enter your birthdays is that we're going to give mugs to people whose birthdays are closest to that of our storytellers tonight. And Jackson and Annette are behind the scenes looking at all your birthdays you entered and trying to figure out who our winners are for that. So while they do that, I want to let the people on Facebook know too that I have one additional special date written down here. And if you put your birthday in the comments of the video on Facebook right now, we'll also get a mug out to the person whose birthday is closest to this special date. And I'll tell you whose birthday that is a little bit later on as well. So post your birthday in the comments of Facebook. Or again, if you're shy about posting that, post any one date that you want. I mean, it's just a gamble, right? So anyway, thanks and welcome all our storytellers. Thank you so much for your stories tonight. How are you all feeling?
What a thrill.
Yeah, it's nice to have it over, right? All the nerves. Jennifer, you had to go last. Were you just like a ball of nervous tension waiting the entire time?
You know, the hardest part is that I kept wanting to cry at other people's. Like, no, keep it together.
Yeah, there's some really very moving moments throughout the evening. Thanks again, everybody. Yeah, I've got some questions that were submitted by our audience members, and I wrote them down in the order of our storytellers tonight. So I'm going to ask those. Jordan, that parable that you read, is that part of hospice training? Do they give you that there, or where did you find that?
Oh, no. Although I feel like it would go really well in it. That was something that a friend of mine had texted me, and when I read it, there was a wave of like, maybe there are things I don't know, or like, what are the questions I'm asking that actually aren't the full picture? And it was pretty perfect timing to be able to resurface it with my grandpa and just have it be something that I think about often.
Was it scary, like bringing up the idea of reading it to him? Like, did you feel awkward at all?
You know, he was an incredible presence and man, and very welcoming. He also, I think, sometimes would get a little tired of like, I like to ask these really big life questions. And sometimes he'd be like, Jordan, can we just be right now? But I felt like actually the parable was like a way to really talk about some of the things that were still weighing on my mind and heart, and that I wanted his input on. I wanted to know, like, how is he feeling as he faced the end of his life? And he knew the end of his life was near. And it was just really a sweet moment, actually. It was really nice that it was met with such a tender, like, yeah, we can approach it in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Inma, are you a writer? Are you published?
No. Yet.
Yes, you're a writer, or yes, you're published?
Not yet writer. Oh, I'm writing, but not yet published.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And are you still working as a sommelier?
Yes.
At some point, I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw this lovely outdoor setup that you had. Is that in your yard? Do you entertain people at your home?
Because I organize wine test, I used to organize wine tastings before COVID. So yeah. And
if I come to the UK, will you organize one while I'm there?
Of course.
Okay. Thanks. Amy, when you were reunited with your oldest, did you discover any new grandchildren along with him?
No.
Okay.
No.
So this is just the
no.
6th soon. When's the 7th due?
Actually, the 7th, I had to recount. The 7th was born in October.
Oh.
The 8th is, I lost count. The 8th is due in May. Right? 3, 4, 7, 8. 8th is due in May.
You are blessed.
8th is due in May. So
they need a doula. Let me know.
I will let you know. This next group is a doula type. So
there we go. Okay, there we go.
Doula type. I won't go into like what you mean by that. But Jordan, what a great excuse to come visit your mother in Cincinnati.
Right, you could.
Yes, thank you, Amy. She's thanking you already.
Yes, I'm sure she is. May. Is May good? End of April, beginning of May?
We'll talk offline. Yeah.
We'll exchange emails. Nicole, Abby wants to know, did Colin make it as a surgical nurse? She needs to know.
Oh, I have no idea if he is a surgical nurse. I know that he graduated, and I have no idea where he is in the world, but I do know he did graduate.
Super. But that's it.
That's it. Colin's out in the world, but I don't know where he is.
Yeah, it didn't sound like he was the type of person you might sort of like keep in touch.
We were very different.
Yeah. Not that he wasn't the sort of person, but the two of you weren't the sort of pairing of people that would keep in touch.
Yeah, we weren't naturally paired. We were put together. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Jennifer, the name Max, is it short for anything? And how did you decide on Max?
We actually decided on Jessica first. And everyone we knew had boys. And we figured, oh God, this has got to be a girl. We know this is a girl. I'm going to name it after Jason's grandmother. And we actually went to one of my appointments early on, and it was well before they were supposed to be able to tell us the gender. And the nurse doing the ultrasound, she went, whoa, do you want to know the gender? And I was like, I think you just told us the gender. And so then we were like, okay, Jessica, that's gone. And we just wanted to go with something that was a little more old school, something not as common. Now Max is all over the place. But he was the first one to be able to write his name in class because it's just 3 letters. Mm-hmm. And if he wants to be Maximilian someday, that's up to him. So
I tell you, we came this close to choosing Max as the name for my son. And I honestly can't remember if it was his mother or me, who one of us wanted it to be short for something longer. And the other one was like, no, it has to be just Max. And we couldn't agree on that. So we went with something else altogether. I don't know. I mean, I loved his name. But anyway, so do you have any questions for each other? You all only just met each other last night. I mean, that's a weird thing to ask.
I have to say, Jordan, I feel like my experience may have gone differently if you had been with me.
Or Colin, maybe, Jennifer.
Right, or Colin, exactly.
Yeah.
That when I first heard Nicole's story last night, there was a moment that I really did think, was she in my room? I don't really remember the early parts, so.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So after, spending time thinking about your stories individually, I mean, we go our whole lives and our stories are a part of us, but seldom do we focus so much energy on like one story of our life, and just, I mean, Amy, you probably have focused a lot of energy throughout your life.
My story's been, like I shared it with the kids, and it just, it replays, it reworks itself a lot at lots of different things, family things. And when I run into old high school classmates, and they find out that we've reunited, and they're like, oh, tell us what happened, so it just keeps it's rolling right along.
Yeah, you said you sent copies of the letter you received to all your friends and family.
I did. I have lots of friends, some family, not lots, but who are not in Cincinnati, who were not at that part. It was my parents' 60th wedding anniversary. It was a party for them. And so we had some family not come in. So I sent copies to them. And then some of my really close high school and college friends who were just like, wow, I want to read the letter. And my little sister was in Atlanta at the time, and she said, I want to read the letter. And then of course they all wanted to read the letter that I sent. And I said, oh no, that's his letter. He wants to share that. He will share that at some time, but that's his to share, not mine. So
nice.
My little sister was not happy with me.
And for the rest of you, has revisiting some of these topics made you think about, like Jordan, you call your mother to thank her. What about the rest of you and your moms and what they went through to deliver you? Do you, have you been thinking about that at all while working on your stories? No, yeah, okay.
I want to reiterate, every single birth I'm at, I'm like, the person I'm texting, I'm just like, thank you so much. You know, however the birth is, and just every birth experience is so different, but there's so much strength and commitment, as we all know in our stories. But it's really beautiful to let them be reflection points in our lives.
I will say, no joke, my son is about to turn 13, February 20th. And his voice is lower than you'd expected and a little croaky and funny and sweet. His voice it was at that moment when I first heard it, it is now a different variation of the exact same thing. And so reliving this story for a couple of weeks, when I wake him up in the morning, I'm like, oh, my little baby boy, he's about, this tall, but.
That's great. And you have 2 sons now?
I have the one, but we've got, my nephew is in town doing COVID homeschooling with us.
Oh, I see.
If you're homeschooling one 13-year-old boy, you might as well homeschool 2.
Thanks so much. Seriously, it was great. Thank you to you all. I want to let people know about the folks who won the post-show mugs. Bob, it looks like your birthday is 3 days away from Jennifer's, and that earns you a mug. And the special birthday I had set aside for our Facebook audience was, I have the date right here. Oh, here it is, September 22nd. That's the birthday of my dog, Rosie, who inspired the choice of the True Dog theme coming up. And looks like Claire, friend of mine actually, who works at the library here, is the closest to that, less than a month away. So Claire, congratulations. I'll be in touch about how to get your mug. And you too, Bob. Folks, thank you all so much for sticking around for the question and answer and for sharing your stories tonight. Friends, please, thank you for joining us in the Zoom audience and on Facebook. We are really, really so grateful to have you here with us. I'm sure you all have something to do now. I have to take out the trash. So hopefully we'll be seeing you very soon at the earliest at True Dog on April 29th. And until next we see you, be true.
We're clear.
We're still on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, we are.